Today I'm going to take you on a tour of my homestead, show you what's going on, show you what I'm doing, the projects I'm working on currently. I'm kind of doing a lot of stuff all at once, so I have a lot to update. It's been a while since I've done one of these. So my first one this year, and then the last couple months of last year it was cold, so it's been like 7 months, at least several months, since I've done a tour of everything, and even since then it's changed a lot. So we'll start off in my twin wall panel greenhouse. All of my plant starts are doing well in here, but I still have a lot of work left to do in here. I have this one bed completed. We built this using cedar offcuts from my cousin's mill that he milled up some cedar for us, and he had a pile of these offcuts that he was just gonna use for firewood, so we said we could have them, and we ended up building this bed with them. I think it looks cool. It's cedar, so it's not gonna rot, or at least not rot as quickly. And this bed is just absolutely huge, I mean, which is good, but it's taking a lot of soil to fill up, and I have right now, I have it filled up about 3/4 of the way, and I'm getting a soil delivery tomorrow, and that's when I'm really gonna start doing a lot of my garden expansion projects, and I'll talk about all that in a second. But once I get that soil, I can fill up the rest of this bed and get all my peppers and stuff that I'm gonna be putting in here planted. I need to build the rest of the beds that are gonna be in here. I'm about 1/4 of the way done with the beds that are gonna fit inside of here, hopefully. But before I do that, I need to build a window in on the far side of this greenhouse back here, opposite of the door, so I can get some ventilation going. But this greenhouse is awesome. I'm pumped to actually get this thing planted and all the work done in here. I wanna get this thing finished up, get all the beds built, fill them up with soil, and get it planted as soon as I can, so I can start the clock on all these peppers and tomatoes and everything else I'm gonna be putting in there. The other greenhouse we have is this A-frame. This thing is good to go already. We built this a little earlier last year, so we had all the beds and everything filled up. So we were able to get these tomato plants and peppers planted. It was about a week or so ago now, a little bit over a week. So we got about 3 extra weeks in front of our last average frost date. And I think I could probably extend that out even more next year, now that we've seen how it went this year. But we have a lot of peppers in there, tomatoes. We should be getting a lot of food out of there, because it's got a huge jump start on the rest of my garden. Speaking of the rest of my garden, at this point last year, this was just an empty lawn. And last year we were really focused on building everything, getting everything set up, filling all the beds with soil, just a long process. But now we have a huge jump start on this year, and we have a lot of these beds planted already, and we already have some carrots, some lettuce, and a bunch of radish germinating. This middle section here, we have these little triangle beds, and we're really trying to dedicate these to things that take up a lot of space in raised beds, like cabbage. We also have a zucchini in here, so this is a good area for all these sorts of plants. And then this giant trellis that we have behind our A-frame, this was all tomatoes last year, and I think this year we're gonna devote half of it to tomatoes here, this right-sided tomatoes, and the other half to trellising some other squash, some heavy squash, that sort of thing. It's just crazy how far ahead of schedule we are compared to last year, when I was even scrambling to get something put together, let alone a seed into the ground. And at this time last year, we didn't even have this Hugelkultur built. So this Hugelkultur has been sitting for about 11 months since we built it last year. And a few weeks ago, I went into the woods and collected all of these rocks to make a rock border around it to keep the grass off of it a little bit and just kind of define its own space. I went through and I planted 25 strawberry crowns on here, and a few of them have made it that I'm looking here. Hopefully some of these crowns make it and can just kind of take over this whole area. And then behind the Hugelkultur in the rest of my garden area, we have what we call our mega bed. This thing is a giant bed. It's 4 huge logs of trees. This is gonna be devoted all to tomatoes, maybe some peppers, some things like that. I'm gonna have to get to work on this pretty soon though. It's gonna take a decent amount of time to get everything trellised, but it's gonna be really cool when it's all done. The plans that I have for the rest of this area in my garden is this tarped area to the side of mega bed, and behind it I'm going to be devoting all of this to growing corn, millet, sunflowers, and sorghum. And I'm going to be trying to harvest and store enough of those items to feed my chickens through the winter. So I want to do corn and sunflower and everything for the chickens over here, and then on the other side, between our Hugelkultur and all of these tomatoes and mega bed, I'm going to be devoting this area to potatoes and onions, things like that. So with that soil delivery I'm getting tomorrow, I'm going to be getting to work on turning this whole area from a lawn into a garden. I'm going to be getting the grass out of here, putting cardboard down, and then making mounds for my potatoes and onions and garlic, anything else like that I'm going to be planting in here. I just got my seed potatoes in the mail, and we have some that we saved from last year, so we have over 100 pounds of seed potato that we're going to be cutting, so it's going to be even more than that. I'm going to be trying to build beds big enough that I can fit all these potatoes in and grow enough to feed ourselves over the rest of the year and have enough left over so I never have to buy seed potatoes again. This tarped area right above my greenhouse here, same exact thing that I'm doing down in the garden, I'm gonna be doing up here. This next week or two is something I've been looking forward to for a long time, and a lot of stuff's gonna come together. And it's gonna be a lot of work, but it's gonna be a lot of fun, and there's gonna be some huge results in a short amount of time. So continuing on the other side of where I'm gonna be growing my corn, this whole area used to be where we had our chicken coop, and I had a cattle panel greenhouse here that I was using for compost, but we took all of that out. The area that used to be our chickens, I had to turn that into an orchard, and I planted 13 fruit trees in here, and I made an asparagus and strawberry bed in the corner, which I bordered with rocks as well, which is really coming in handy now because it's keeping a lot of that grass off of that patch. Now that the grass is starting to come alive a little bit. 3 peach in here, 3 pears, a couple apples, a pawpaw, a couple mulberries. Got my compost piles here in front of our black walnut tree. So this is where our old chicken coop used to be. You can see the logs that we built them on. That's where the coop used to be. I took that down, and I built my chickens a new area in the orchard, so I'll get to that next. I'm walking into the orchard right now. One of the reasons I had to take everything out of here for my chickens and plant fruit trees here is because we had a contract with a logging company which was supposed to clear out a lot of these trees on the border of the fenced off area here, and we're supposed to have a lot more cleared space, like a lot more, like probably double or triple the space we already have here. So I was expecting to have all this open space, and I was gonna fence it off and plant more fruit trees in and just kind of expand my orchard and my garden and pretty much the whole operation here. And this was supposed to be done by the end of March, and they just kind of picked up and left and went to a different job about halfway through and didn't get to this area yet. So I didn't have any extra space, but I still had all of the trees that I ordered on the way. So I had to kind of find space in the area that I already had fenced off. So that's why these fruit trees ended up here. And then this area here where the chicken coop used to be, I'm gonna be planting the rest of the fruit that I have coming. So the next stop is the food forest or orchard. I think it's technically a food forest now. But last year was our first substantial harvest of any sort of fruit from our fruit trees in here. So this year they should be taking an even bigger step. And it looks like everything I planted last year, which was like 5 to 7 trees and a bunch more fruit bushes and a lot of blueberry bushes. It looks like all of those made it, and they're starting to bud. Everything, all the trees in here are starting to bud. Some have some flowers, like this plum tree in the back. Same thing with this Evans cherry. This thing is absolutely killing it. I'm so excited for this orchard. I do have to get in here though and get everything fenced off because I have chickens in here now, and I'll show you their setup in a second here. But I have chickens in here now, and they kind of waltz around in here all day. They're really keeping the grass down, which is nice because I'm not even close to having to mow in here at all. So that's a really nice advantage. And they get to free range in here, and the whole area is fenced off, so they're safe from predators. And they have their own coop and compost in here. But I do have to get a fence around all the trees and bushes because they love to dig in the wood chips and all the mulch around the trees. And they've dug up some roots on a couple plants that I have. Then I have these raspberries behind me in the corner. These things are coming to life. Last year, these things were just an absolute jungle, and I got in at the end and I cleaned them up, got a trellis of logs on here. So this year should be a lot better as far as raspberries are concerned. Look at these honeyberries, and I can't recommend these enough. I have a lot more in the mail that I'm gonna be planting up on my greenhouse that I showed you earlier. And I'm gonna be taking cuttings off of those. I'm gonna try to get as much of these into the ground as possible. These things are absolute beasts. They bloom and fruit so much earlier than everything else. And these things are hardy down to zone 2, I believe. So our winter is no problem for them. And I don't know, I'm sorry for rambling about these things, but if you are looking for a fruit to get in your orchard or something, the first thing that jumps into my mind as what I would recommend would be these honeyberries. And then next we have couple of Zestar apple trees, some currants. I have a Jostaberry. This thing made it through the winter, even though it's not supposed to be hardy down to our zone. Apparently we had a mild winter, so that's awesome. And then I also have these Egyptian walking onions. These are about 3 years old now. And as you can see, they're pretty big. They're taller than my Buff Orpington rooster. And behind the hoop house here, behind the chickens, is the extra raspberry patch that I put in last year. So I transplanted them from those raspberries and I put some canes back here. The chickens love this trellis. They just sit up here. They sit up here all day. But all these raspberries, looks like they made it. I was nervous to transplant these, but all the canes that are in here are green enough. So I think they all survived the move over here, and they all look pretty healthy. So the plan is to kind of let them take over this area as well. This whole side of my orchard will just be devoted to raspberries, and hopefully they'll all be within the trellis. But yeah, this food forest is so cool, and it's been many years of effort to get this all set up, but now that I'm at the finish line, or at least the point in the race where I'm starting to get some fruit out of this thing, it's all been worth it. So at the very top of the food forest here is my high tunnel and our mobile chicken coop. So this is our new setup for the chickens. They have their own coop right here. I just built this, wheeled it over here into its final resting place. I can move them around if I need to. I don't really plan on it because we built another more mobile coop. This one's pretty heavy and it's more of a permanent one that I can move if I need to. But they have their coop here, which is pretty much just for them to roost in at night and to lay their eggs. And then they move over right here into our high tunnel, which is our new compost area. It's where I dump all the food scraps I get from our local grocery store in here, and then I dump some feed in there every morning. And they absolutely demolish these piles. I had all of this stuff. I had it in a giant pile this morning, and they just absolutely tore it apart. So between what they have here and the food scraps and all of the bugs they get from free ranging through the orchard all day, I barely put any feed in there, and the egg production has stayed the same as far as I can tell. So we're getting a lot of eggs every morning. So I'm gonna start playing with like the least amount of feed I can give them to still maintain the egg production and kind of figure out that balance. But I'm really excited with how this system has turned out now. They are very spoiled birds. So we have about 30 chicks in the brooder right now. They're a couple weeks old. So they should be outside in another month from now. And 15 of them are for sure hens because they were sexed from the hatchery I bought them from. And then the other 15, hopefully 7 or 8 of those are hens. So we should be adding about 20 more hens into my flock here. And I'm very excited about that because we have a lot of grass that they can help keep under control. I want to start using them in my garden, especially now that I have mobile coops. Also, check out this mobile coop that we just got finished. This one is 4 by 4 feet. This is all cedar too. So this thing's really light, really easy to pull and move around. And this will be really good to have for our meat birds, which I put in our blueberry patch to keep the grass down over there. And that's actually the next stop on the tour, so let's head over there. So there's about like 77, 78 bushes in here. And I planted them all last year and they all seem to be doing really well. All of them made it through the winter as far as I can tell. They're starting to put on some buds. The challenge of this area is the same challenge as it was last year, which is the grass. Last year I got meat birds and I moved them through this whole area and they took care of the grass, no problem. The only issue is they kind of rooted up a couple of the bushes. So I need to get in here and get a thing of fence around each of these bushes, get a layer of wood chips and some compost on top of that. And these things should be good to go. I'm getting my meat birds tomorrow or maybe the day after. They're in the mail, so we'll see when they get here. But then they have 2 weeks in the brooder and then they're on the grass out here. So I'll be putting them into that mobile coop I just showed you. So that should work out really well. But the thing is, this year, this grass is greener, thicker, and just, nicer, I guess, than it was last year. Last year, this thing was just all like weeds. It was just kind of like thick, gnarly stuff. And like now it looks like pasture in here. Like it's so vibrantly green, like greener than anywhere else on our property. Like the specific area inside of this fence. So those meat birds worked their magic in here for sure, which is cool because hopefully these blueberries get some of that fertility. But it's also bad because this grass is going to be even harder to contain now. Overall, this patch looks really healthy. It just needs a bit of work to be set up for the long run. I got some blueberries last year. I should be getting some more this year. And then next year I should be getting a lot. And then the year after is when these things start reaching production, hopefully. We did the math and we should be getting thousands of pounds of blueberries, which is just unreal.